So I make it start time. So let's just have a quick share of some stuff that's been going on. So we've run quite a few value sessions now, haven't we? So the first one we looked at why and how people buy and the sort of decisions they make, and also what we could do to improve people's decision making when they're with us, the thought process and how that works. And then we talked about what you could do to enhance the experience and be seen as differently. So if you remember, Shane did that lovely example between Eves and Xavier. You know, which type of business do we want to be? Which type of business do we want to be seen as, and encourage people to join us through? And then last week, he helped us by going through the heart selling process. So a way of helping the client to identify their own needs. Rather than you feel like a salesperson, because we're not salespeople, but actually we're really good at helping people spot opportunities and let them think about what they need, and therefore we can help them with the solution. A really simple, easy, structured way of doing it. So today, I want to try and bring everything together. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, and we're going to just play this. Now, can I just check, which one are you seeing? Are you seeing the main screen? Yeah? Somebody give me a chat. So are you seeing just a screen that says AVN Value Roadmap on it?
No, we're seeing the presenter view. You're
seeing the presenter view. Thank you. That's always helpful because sometimes it swaps it around, doesn't it? That's what I knew it was going to do. Right, so let me just escape from that, sorry. It's always good when it changes your perceptions of things. So, good start to the day. Got so many screens open, that's the problem. Right, and we'll just switch that. There we go. Right, so today I want to really look at ways to enhance the value of the basic services that we do, the ways that we can add value to the whole prospect journey, the ways that we can make onboarding more valuable, and how we can create raving fans and referrers in the future. Now, the work that we've been doing, just so that you're aware, if you look at your value workbook, the work that we've been doing so far has actually been completing those blank pages that you probably spotted that were page 6 to 12. You know, so what we mean by value, what do we bring, what does your practice offer, ways to add value, understanding the buying decision. And today we're going to look a little bit more at the customer journey. But I wanted to start by thinking about ways to enhance the value of what we currently do. So I want you to just think about what it is. If I point you to page 13, okay, then I want you to think about how you make your core services more valuable. So think about that, because Andy Bounce has a great quote, customers don't care what you do, they only care what they're left with after you've done it. And as accountants, we're really, really good at talking about features, but not actually talking about what is the afters, what are the things that people can get from it. So in the workbook, you'll see on page 13, I actually talk a lot about when you're thinking about the different services that you currently offer, try and think about them in 3 ways. So the first one is, how can we save them money? Okay, or earn them money, because that's 2, isn't it? There's 2 different ways of thinking about that. The second thing is, how can we save them time? And the third one is, how can we just reduce the stress? How can we make life better for them? Okay, so in the booklet, one of the ideas here, it says the 5-star benchmark service, which is see how you're doing compared to your competitors. We will carry out a detailed benchmark review to measure the performance of your business against your competitors. Our detailed report will highlight those areas where improvements can be made to your profitability and cash flow position. And we'll discuss simple actions you could take to emulate the best in your industry and help you create an action plan to start moving towards greater financial success. Okay, now that is a great first step to thinking about it. We've talked about money, we've talked about success, you know, we've perhaps made that really sort of a much better, and probably if your description of benchmark said something like this, you'd be stepping way above quite a lot of other people. But actually, you may want to think about it a bit differently. So what if, thinking about that, saving or earning money, saving time, reducing stress, how about okay, we've got the first bit, the detailed and, you know, the profitability and cash flow. Okay, but at the end of this session, you will have a clear action plan of how you can earn more money by putting into place some simple strategies. And who knows how you'll spend that extra money? Will it be to pay for someone else in your business so you have less stress and can spend more time at home? Or will you use it to buy that thing you've been promising yourself for years? Okay, now if that comes up in a description about your services, then they're thinking personally. They're seeing how doing something on their business can affect them personally. And that's where you can really add value. So one of the key actions from the value workbook, and this is why often the value roadmap takes a little bit longer to do than the first two, because there's quite a lot of work involved, is to think about all your different products and services. And in the workbook, you can list them out and actually start creating new text, okay? And thinking about those three areas. And then once you've changed that text and you've thought about it, please, if you're using Time's Up or, you know, make sure that that text is built in. So Time's Up, if you know, for every service option, extra option, there's a little description box. Just copy and paste this into that, so that then when it comes up, the pop-up box that explains the value of the service will be showing that connected to their personal reward, basically, for doing it. So this is a really important thing to think about making sure that you can think about the existing services. So if you look in the workbook, you've got a few pages in order to look at that, okay? We also then look at linking price, okay? Linking price to services. So if you remember, those of you that have been on Masterclass, okay, in Masterclass, I talk about the 7-step formula for profitable pricing. I know there are some of you that haven't been on that, okay, haven't managed to get to Masterclass yet because of everything that's been going on. There is a YouTube video of that, okay, which I've put the link in here. If anybody wants it, put it in the chat box. Tell me you want the 7-step formula in the chat box, and I will make sure that I send you that link, okay? But what that does is it makes you think about your profitable pricing. And we have built all those 7 steps into Time's Up, okay? But the key thing is making sure that we are addressing people's perceived value, okay? And it's their perception of value which is the most important thing. Not what we perceive as valuable, but what they do. And often that is not the same. We have to think about how that works, and we have to be able to communicate that value, okay? So again, this is more work that has to be done through the workbook, is thinking about, okay, thinking about it, how are you going to discriminate your prices? How are you going to add more value? What tangible things that they can have and intangible things can they have that will affect the value perception that they have? So tangible stuff is really simple, isn't it? You could give them a free 1-page benchmark report, because you can do that very quickly. It's very simple. It gives them an opportunity to ask for more. It could be that you give them the key improvement possibilities report from On Track, because that's a great cross-selling tool for you, but also gives them loads of ideas of things that they could be doing to their business, though it doesn't tell them how, okay? Intangible, you know, about the experience. So just as Shane was talking about Yves and Xavier, what is it that makes that, you know, important? How do they feel about the service they're getting? And then how do we communicate the value? So basically thinking about the language you've used, and we've talked about that in heart selling, but we've just talked about, you know, some of those things we need to think about, and making sure that we link then that value to the price. So making sure that they see, just like I've just shown you on the benchmark, that there is a value equation for them, a perceived value equation. Okay, so the 7 strategies are actually written down in the value workbook. They're page 17 to 23, including some ideas about guarantees in there. So that's really important to think about that. And then the other thing to think about, just with your standard compliance work is about your service bundles, okay? So giving people that choice that I talk about often is that people like a lot of choice, but they can be overwhelmed. So we know about the power of 3. If you give people 3 choices, people will often pick the middle one. But having bundles to give people that choice. And then on page 27, there is a lot of stuff about that and help to build your bundles. Again, this is homework, so I don't want to go through it because I've talked about this, and as you can see, there's a YouTube video about that. But again, use the practice growth experts to help you. Think in particular about making sure that the bundles are something that attracts clients, but also that you can deliver profitably, okay, and have capacity to deliver. So thinking about that. So, you know, just looking at those sorts of things. So today, I really want to look at this, which is the whole journey that we have with clients, okay, right from discovery all the way to raving fans and referrals. So there's a lot of things that we can do to add value in this whole process, okay? So I'm going to just come up with some little ideas, but again, if anybody's got anything else they want to add, then please let me know. Oh, lost my mouse. There we go. Right, so let's just start with discovery. So just quickly in the chat box, just tell me, how do people find you? Okay, so I've got people saying Googling. Yeah, that's true. Word of mouth. Referrals and websites. Yep. Referrals mainly, yeah. This is something that obviously that is quite common, and we say, you know, it's the best way to get people is by referrals. But how do you make that process valuable to people? So, for example, when you get referrals, what do you do about that? How do you make that of value? What do you do to say thank you to the people who give you the referrals? What do you do to the people as they join you? Okay, so thinking about that. With having thought about it, you know, a lot of people sort of have LinkedIn connections. What do we do to thank them? Okay, occasionally mail shots for other people. Okay, yeah, so that's a good idea. Yes, it's sort of supporting other people by letting them find things. Okay, but what about actually, how do they find your website? You know, a lot of you've put website, but how do people find your website? Oh, nice. So Amit sends a thank you cupcake to the person who introduced the client. Nice. So what else could you do? I'm just wanting to think about this, because we often say to people, don't we, how do people discover you? They find you through networking. It used to be, didn't it? And that is starting to happen on the cloud. On Zoom, I've seen that quite a bit. Telesales, haven't they? Through Xero or QuickBooks, find me an accountant, through a Google search. So what are you doing to be at the top of that Google search? Have you ever Googled your own name? That's perhaps an action for people to do. You know, Google your own name, Google your business name, see where you are in the standings, find out what it is that comes up. You know, make sure that you are building up your website to have things in. And traffic is the thing, isn't it, that keeps websites live. So, you know, thinking about the work that we've done in positioning, where we've looked at how we can develop your website, it's really important to make sure that that website gets looked at. Yeah. Sometimes, yes, it's about where you are. So if you can be the top in a list of accountants in a particular area, that's great. That's a good way of finding you. Okay. So thinking about where you do it, but also thinking about, could there be other things that you do? And then obviously, if they can find your website, How do you capture them? What have you got on your website to capture that lead? So making sure that you've thought about the things that you're doing. So, you know, we talk about having ways of engaging people, don't we? You know, perhaps a golden carrot, we call it, don't we, for lead capture. So if you give me your email address and your first name, then you can download the 19 things you should know about an accountant. Okay, or maybe it could be your AVN book. There could be all sorts of things going on. So just thinking again about lead capture. How are you doing it? And then as you're doing it, what are you doing to build on that nurturing for them? Because it's great, yes, you know, if people come through and you can take that call straight away and you can manage it, fine. But what happens if you're not available? What makes that, what is there that keeps that person warm, nurtures it, gives them ideas as we move forward? So these are things I want you to think about, because I want you to think about how do you add value, because what do you do to make sure that everybody, you know, these people, these hot leads now stay with you and keep moving. So you could be doing things like, I know a lot of you have been doing newsletters, emails, perhaps posts in LinkedIn and Facebook, maybe connections with the Chamber of Commerce. You've been doing lots of things, but you need to keep adding value. Even if somebody says, not quite yet, you know, they've just sort of looked at your website and thought, okay, that can be really important. Okay, but what about actually then moving forward? So it's a nice problem to have, but some members are getting too many prospects knocking on their door. So what do we do as to make sure that that's managed? Well, one of the things about that is obviously making sure that perhaps we have something like a discovery call. And so you could possibly have a process where part of the thing is that you have a discovery call. It may be with you, it may be with somebody else, but a lot of the members I'm talking to are using some booking system, a calendar system, to book a 30-minute discovery call. Because we know, don't we, from our positioning work, what our ideal client is like. And part of that ideal client is whether or not we can like them and whether we can work with them. Having a great Zoom call or even a phone call, you can just find out a lot about them. You can find out what's going on with them. You can make sure that, you know, they are the right person. You could perhaps make sure that they fit your ideal client profile, or if they don't completely fit it, why you want to take them on. So really good to make sure that you perhaps have something like a discovery call. That's also good whether or not you've got lots of people coming at you or not, because you want to make sure that you're taking on the right type of client. You've done all that work, you know, to attract the right client, and hopefully your website's attracting the right client, the language you're using is, but making sure that moving forward, you are going to continue to work with people you want to work with, not just take people on. Okay. Now I know there's a necessity to grow, and there are a lot of people who need help, but it's making sure that we find the right people. Now there are lots of things, obviously, in System Builder that can help you with that nurturing. Okay. So you could use some of the insider reports. There's a whole load of stuff. You could even perhaps use little tidbits out of the Key Improvement Possibilities report. You know, little things that can increase that connection. Okay. So last time we covered the sales meeting. Okay. We looked at why and how people buy and how they make that way positive. Now, a lot of the time we think about people coming into our offices, and yes, they are coming into the offices to meeting now, but if the first time they meet you is on Zoom, how do you make that experience great? So thinking about how can you add value to them coming on Zoom, because not everybody will want to be on camera. Okay. Quite a few of you I've asked to be on camera on Thursday and you don't want to, because it's not a comfortable place for us to be. So thinking about that, what can you do to make that pre-sales meeting thing exciting? So you could send them a little email with an agenda, how to log into Zoom, what to expect, maybe a little photograph of yourself so they know they're talking to the right person. You know, little things like that just give that people confidence and the value, you know, that they're feeling that they're talking to the right person. Okay. Because sometimes you can go into a Zoom meeting and then you may not feel like you're in the right place at the right time. So just checking that, okay? Maybe explaining that your Zoom has a holding room. Most of them now do, don't they? So explaining that when you join Zoom, you'll be put in a little holding room. We're sorry about that. That's just the way the software works, but I'll be notified you're in there, and then I will let you in and we can have a chat. So just making that experience positive, okay? Really, really important to send out that perhaps agenda pre-meeting. Okay, so now we get to say somebody said yes and they've signed up, and we're in our honeymoon period, we call it, don't we? And this is one of the biggest challenges, I think, is that, you know, you've gone in and you've done a great pitch to them. They're very excited. You can see lots of opportunity in the sales meeting. I'm hoping that you've sorted out the payment, the fixed price agreement, all that sort of stuff. But how do we make the onboarding great? So put some comments, please, in the chat box. What do you do when people join you to actually make it a great experience? Okay, so welcome email, yeah. And does that, Lucy, does that introduce people to the team? Yeah. Make sure you keep them updated. Make sure you're keeping contact with them. You're convincing them, because do you remember we talk about in pricing, we talk about that choice, but then knowing that you've got the confidence that you made the right decision. So the confidence about that. Brilliant. So Lucy says they send out a welcome email which explains all the team and introduces them to their account manager. So their client manager, the person that's going to look after them, which is great, because if you're not if you've done the sales meeting part, but you're handing over the work to one of your team, that has to be managed in a really positive way. Okay, so how do we find, I mean, one of the issues that a lot of people say to me is the pain about getting information. Exactly. This onboarding is the challenging thing at the moment because of getting information. So how can we find simple ways to get information? Okay, so that might be one of the key things. So even just having a really nice email that goes out the day after they've signed up and says, oh, I can't wait to work with you. For legality's sake, I just need this key information. I've already set you up a private portal on our system. You know, this is your connection. Just put that information in there and then it'll be safe and secure. Simple. If they're not into technology, obviously you need to find a way of doing it. Like maybe that you need to say, can I come and visit you on this date and pick up this information? Whatever it is, make it part of that. Brilliant. So Simon says as part of his letter of engagement, he asked them to complete the information. Great, that's really important. Oh, and gets it into accountancy manager. Oh, Simon, you're on fire with this. Okay. But there are other things, aren't we, that we can do to welcome them? So, you know, do we give our new clients a welcome gift? I mean, one of the obvious ones would be the PMI folder that's behind me, okay? Wouldn't that be, you know, this is a folder, this is what I'm going to give you now. This is what we give all our new clients because we're going to be looking at this 9-step process as we work with you because we want to grow your business. Now, today what we've looked at is actually pricing for the account section, that's section 4. But we've talked about other things that we can help you with. So I'm going to give you the folder so that you can have a quick look through that. And if there's anything that rings a bell or you want, then we can talk about it. Great. Dawn sends out here a business guide. Fantastic. Yeah, so there are brochures, aren't there, in System Builder that you can use. AA accountants actually have a welcome box, which is lovely. It has all sorts of things in it, and I can't remember them all, but they're all like little fun things. So a compass, so you always know you're going in the right direction. You know, a tea bag, so you can always make sure you stop and have a cup of tea and just think when things get stressed. You know, those sorts of a stress ball. You know, little fun things that just reflect their business. So the same with you, thinking about how you've positioned yourself, the way that you've positioned the things that you're doing. What could you do, you know, to make somebody feel well? It's all right. Yeah, we'll give out pens, don't we? And things like that. But what else could we do that could just make it a nice, remarkable experience? Something that people will remark on and say, what, you know what? I joined my account and they gave me all this stuff. they must have too much money is probably what the joke is, isn't it? But actually, no, actually, it makes them feel great. So, you know, I know that, like, you know, there could be opportunity of sending them something that they love. You know, if you've actually been doing some work with them and you find out there's an issue, then sending them something that's relative, even if it's a little picture or you know, one of these silly things, these things that go around Facebook, or you see, I often do it. If I see something and it resonates with me with one of the members I'm talking to on a regular basis, I will pass it on and say, oh, I thought of this. I saw this, I thought of you. Okay. So thinking about that, just again, to reaffirm that relationship and add value to it. So onboarding is quite important, isn't it? Because there's a lot of work to be done, and we tend to focus into that, let's get the information, let's get things sorted. And on Thursday, I'm also going to be talking about how we make sure we get paid for all that extra stuff we have to sort out at the beginning. I don't mean the legal stuff, but you know, when you get on a new client, you take on board their books and it's an absolute nightmare, you know, actually understanding that and getting paid for that. But to me, it's all about confirming for that client that they've made the right decision. Yeah, I want to work with this person. You know, so in the honeymoon period, I want to be introduced to the person that's going to be looking after me. I want to know who's going to be on the end of the phone. You know, it's really nice to just get a little recognition for something. And it doesn't, and in particular, not to cost a lot. So again, one of the other things is if you are part of B1G1, it might be a gratitude certificate through B1G1. You know, and you can say, you know, you've probably seen on our website how passionate we are about the UN Global Goals. Well, you know, from what you said, it sounded like you were really passionate about this. So as a thank you, we've made a donation via B1G1 to this particular charity. Making that connection, that personal connection, is really important. And in the honeymoon period, particularly making that, not just focusing on the technical stuff that we have to do, but also making sure that we keep that personal connection all the time, because it's really important. So thinking about that, you know, we might want to think about just reminding people of who they've got contact with, and reminding them perhaps of the fixed price agreement, give them some of the ideas of all those extra things you can do, you know, perhaps sending them out some little thank yous. Okay, so I think I've probably talked about that enough. So now I'm thinking about what can we do to touch base regularly? And this is how we create raving fans and referrers of the future, isn't it? So currently, what do you do to stay in contact with your clients, to add value to them? So come on, I know you've been doing stuff, so let's have this in the chat box, please. Okay, brilliant. Monthly newsletters and updates, that's a good one. Newsletters, business guides, autoresponders, yeah. Newsletters and calls, exactly, yeah. The personal touch is quite important, isn't it, Brian? To make sure that you do regular calls. Yeah. So what can you do to touch base regularly? Now, in the System Builder systems, we talk about having probably 3 meetings at minimum a year, don't we? We talk about the pre-year end tax meeting. So we go in 3 months before the year end, and we can talk about what we can do to help them save tax, hopefully talk about their business, do the pricing for the accounts, quotes and stuff like that. Then we're going to have a year end meeting just to sort of go through the accounts. And hopefully in the middle of the year, we'll have a check-in time meeting. So that's 3 ways. Now, again, depending on the service bundles that you've created, it could be that you've sold them as part of the packages, or that they want monthly board view, quarterly board view, one-page plans. All of these are ways of connecting with people and adding value, because every time you produce a one-page plan, that adds value because that is going to trigger actions. The whole point of a one-page plan is to trigger actions. The whole point of you being there as board view is to be a numerate, educated outsider who can look at that business and go, why are you doing that? Thinking about things. It could be that. But there are lots of other ways, aren't there, that we could add value. So let's think about that. What else could you do for touch points? Let's put some ideas in the chat box, please. I'm not saying you have to be doing it now, but what else could you do? This is an opportunity to think of things, if you had the time and everything else that you'd love to do to be able to look after your clients and make them raving fans. All things you'd just like to do for your A and B clients because you know that they're the ones you want. Oh, nice. So Stephen, what seminars and network events? Brian says a client conference, fantastic. Lucy, to do the business builder forums. Dawn, our office hangout. Yeah. So some really nice connection points, aren't there? Because that's the important thing. What else? Well, I know you've got loads of ideas. Yeah, take out for lunch sometimes. Or wine tasting. Some people will, some people won't, but that's a nice thing, yeah. Barbecues are nice, aren't they? Or would have been in the old days until we got told we couldn't have those connections. But, you know, those sort of social events or, you know, online quizzes, something that's outside the norm of work is really important too. So this is connecting them to you and making and adding value as people. What could we do to add value as well in sort of for their business? Oh yeah, birthday cards is a good one, Simon. Yeah, that's really true. You know, making sure you can't miss it. If you get it right one year, you can't miss it the next. So you need to have it automated. So Shane mentioned this the other day. So this is a personalized calendar that one of our members did, you know, so for everyone they put in their key dates, they put in a joke, they put in a quote, but on every page there was a connect back, so they could connect them and say, oh, did you see the joke for this month's flipping neck, you know, whatever. So connect them to the clients through invites to business events. Love that idea, connecting them to other clients. And that's a really good thing, isn't it? Making sure that not just through business events, but if you've got a good client and they need help in some area that you've got another client in, connecting them, you know, is a great way of doing it. One of the things one of our members used to do is they had a board in their main reception and every client could put a business card on there. And then obviously you could come in and while they were waiting, they could scan the business cards and go, oh yeah, actually that's something like we could do. Yeah, thank you, Dawn. Dawn does that good. Well done, Dawn. Because it's a really great way of letting people see, you know, while they're waiting to meet you, be thinking, oh yeah, need my bathroom done. Oh yeah, such and such here. You know, that's a really good way. Some of the other ways we could think about doing it is, you know, just sending the key improvement possibility report, having that meeting, saying I've been thinking about what I could do for you and some ideas, making sure they come in, seeing what else you could do. That can trigger off. I mean, currently, I can't remember how many questions are in there at the moment. I think it's 27, might be more, can't remember. But you know, there could be 27 things that triggers that you could help clients, and you just schedule it through the year because you don't want to overwhelm people. Or what about doing simple stuff that works with people? Offering the first one for free, you know, or as a guaranteed, that's what a better one. I'd say, well, do you know what? We usually charge £500 a session for this. It's about a half day. What I want to do is fully guarantee every session. We'll just do the first one. And if you don't like the first one, that's fine. We'll just stop. But there are 7 in total that we go through. So what we could do is if we start now, we'll look at the first one. It's all about pricing. And at the end of that, we guarantee you'll come out with ideas that will earn you at least that £500. Now that's simple to do. And then you can say, well, do you know what? That test, you'll need to test those ideas for a couple of months. So let's do the second section, maybe on month 3. Now month 3 is going to take some testing because we're going to look at how customers buy more. So what else could they do? Well, let's do the third one on month 6. And you can build up to 2 years to do the whole of Simple Stuff That Works, because all the things that they're doing, they will have to go away and do actions and testings. But in between times, you've got an excuse to contact them and say, how are you doing? What's been getting in the way? What have been the successes? What have been the challenges? Have you thought about doing something else with that? Giving them those touch points is really important. And Simple Stuff That Works is a really great tool for doing that. Obviously, the other thing you can use is taxability. You know, sending out something like taxability, you know, thinking about, oh, right, okay, we're at this point. So we could send it out February and say, do you know what? Have you got any ideas of what things we need to know about before we do your tax return? The other thing is, we've talked about in positioning, haven't we, about your ideal client and about grading your clients. So you've got A, B, C, Ds. Maybe you could create a different touch point plan, say that, touch point plan for each grade of clients. So your A ones, you know, you will be speaking to them every month. Even that's just to pick up the phone and say, how you doing? You know, what's your biggest challenge this month? And allowing them to have, as part of that A client package, a 30-minute call with their client manager every month to just find out what's going on, not just technically, but what is going on. And it's a good opportunity spotting process for us as accountants, but it's a good care process as well, isn't it, for your client? It could be that if your Bs, maybe you just do that quarterly. Maybe your Cs, you do that 6 monthly, and for your Ds, you don't. So you could come up with lots of plans for that, but it's getting your team involved with this as well, because you can get them to be, if you can get your clients to really be engaged with you, that's when they become raving fans. I mean, I've got lots of ideas about things that you could do. So, because every touch point is a cross-selling opportunity. So you could build in for your A's and your B's the quarterly review. It could be that you do cloud interrogation. Okay, so Pom's asking me how to get the team involved in this. Well, your team have a great way of being able to talk to the clients in a different way, to be able to talk to them about what's going on in their business. So they may be able to talk about some of the stuff that they're seeing as they're doing the accounts or the bookkeeping or the payroll. But they also are really often very good at seeing it from a client point of view. They're in a different position, you see. So they might be able to think about what else is going on in the business. So thinking about what would be a customer experience. So for example, I often think about the customer experiences I like, and the customer experience I definitely don't. And you will remember those, okay? Now, it doesn't matter what industry that is in, that learning can be applied elsewhere, okay? So for example, I often tell a story about the fact that when I had my drive done, okay, I got 3 quotes for having my drive done. Now, my drive is on a slope, it slightly turns, and one of the things I used to get was quite a lot of water on it, and it would freeze, and it wasn't very nice because it's on quite a big slope. And I had 3 quotes done. And in the end, I picked the most expensive. Now, that's not like me, I have to tell you. I don't like spending a lot of money. But I picked it because of the way that the guy came out and gave me the quote. Okay, so he came out and he talked about the fact that actually he came from, believe it, a civil engineering background, and he had set up this business, and when he looked at my drive, he understood the way that the rock feature was going to be in and the way the water collected. He'd thought about it and he'd done a plan and shown me how the water was going to come off the drive and safely down to a drain that's nearby. He talked about the insurance he had. He talked about the definite time period he would do it in, because obviously if it's on my drive, I can't get my car in and out, so I would have to leave my car somewhere else. He talked about all the things included, like skip hire, where the skip would be, how we would make sure that that didn't affect my neighbours. And he agreed with me a time frame where the noise, because the noise was going to be phenomenal, he needed a digger in my drive and everything else, how he would manage that. We talked about the quality of the materials he wanted to use. So part of my drive is already like a weathered concrete, and the bit that I wanted to do, I wanted him to match it, which obviously is not easy. So it was like looking at that. So he came up with all these ideas. Now, what he fulfilled for me was he talked about what my needs were. So my needs were safety, knowing somebody who knew what they were doing, you know, weren't just making it up, that he'd thought about my lifestyle, and he was willing to agree a timescale for me that he guaranteed he would do it in. So to me, he was thinking about that. Now, that can apply to any business, can't it? How do you make the client feel safe and secure? How do you make sure you deal with their biggest issue? How do you make sure that they are not worried about how it's going to affect their private personal life? You can do that in anything. So the team are really good at that. And that's really important. And Brian's right. Yeah. The other thing is to get the team together, so have a team meeting and let them come up with ideas, because they will, given the chance, come up with loads and loads of ideas. Sorry, gone off on a little tangent there, but I think it's really important to think about, you know, there are lots of, get your team to think about their own experiences. Okay. And then look at what is best practice and what is not. And then you can share that with people. Okay. And that can be built into all sorts of services that you can give. So going back to touch points, okay, obviously there's the regular thing that people now, directors, want to know: what sort of money can they take out of your business? So you could build that into one of your service deliveries or not. A projection of your tax liability. So one of the things that has come up recently is that, you know, we're all been bombarded with a lot of work. You know, when people have been on lockdown recently, they've been handing over their accounts much earlier than they would normally do. And we've talked about making sure that they understand that if they're an A and B client, they will get serviced as fast as we can. If they're a C and D, they need to be parked for a while, and we need to discuss with them that the fact that they will have to wait. But the fact that they're waiting doesn't mean that we can't do something for them. So we could say, well, based on what you've told me so far, so for example, they might say, well, I think my turnover is this, and a cost, then we say, well, you could give a very vague estimate of what your tax liability is, knowing what you paid last year, as well as what your business has been doing this year. We suggest you start putting some money away each month. How about you put this much money away? Now, that's a little thing, and it's not saying this is going to be your tax bill. It's just saying, let's start planning for it, because you're helping somebody think about their cash flow. So that's a good one. Doing some pre-year-end checklists, you know, thinking about potential tax savings. Maybe things like, you know, just simple things like, you know, if you have a meeting on Zoom, recording it and sending them the recording. Say to them, you know what, you don't need to take notes now. What we'll do is we'll just send you the recording, and you can rewatch it at your own leisure and make notes. Or you might send them the recording with, like, these are the 3 key points we agreed with. Okay, so that's nice. And the same with like your year-end reviews or any other meetings, you could choose to record them and send them recordings. It's very easy now, isn't it? So thinking about all those different ways, touch points, is really, really important. Okay, because as we start adding more and more value, as we start doing things, they start building those touch points, and that's when we get the raving fans. Oh, we're looking to give clients bookkeeping training, Brian. Well done. Yeah, you see, things like that's a great thing, isn't it? Because you're not only tapping into the business owner, you could be tapping into their team as well. And they can become raving fans, which is also helpful, isn't it? So making sure that connection works. Yeah, some really good stuff you can be doing to help connect. So with the value workbook, yeah, true, Brian, it does make your life easier if they know what they're doing, because fixing it is a bit of a challenge, isn't it? So just to think about the whole point of the value roadmap, yeah, is to start adding value, obviously getting paid for it. So you need to make sure you use times up to get paid for that, okay? And if you remember, there's a little switch in times up that switches to PMI. So you can price the PMI stuff through that as well. But making sure that you do this, that you look at it, and that you look through the workbook and make sure you've got your actions clear, because this is really important. Because these are the steps that then take you to real sort of business growth work, okay? Once you start talking about PMI, once you start getting through the performance measurement improvement, once you start giving people advice, and there's so much stuff in System Builder to help you with that, as well as your Practice Growth Expert. You know, I always say to people, you know, you've got a client and you're not sure what to suggest to them, you know, tell me a little bit about them and I'll come up with some resources you can have a look at. because there's so many things that we can help. But making sure you've got those touch points, you're adding value, okay? And the other important thing is that you record what you're doing this stuff, okay? So you recorded that changes, and that's why the performance measurement improvement system is so good, because you're recording the improvement, whether that's an improvement in happiness, you know, so when they started, their happiness was a 4, and when you've got through a year, their happiness is now a 7. That's a substantial change. Not expecting to get somebody to a 10, but a 7 or 8 would be very nice, you know, or it may be that it's a turnover, or it may be a profit change, but you can see that, okay? Efficiency change. That's where that becomes really useful. Now, the thing to remember is you have to deliver, obviously, on everything you say. So you need the internal systems to ensure that you deliver on your promise. So if you are going to be adding these values, if you're going to build into your service connections, that service levels that you're going to deliver monthly meetings or quarterly meetings or whatever else, you need those in your internal systems. So I would suggest that if, for example, you've had a sales meeting, and as part of that sales meeting, the client has decided, yes, they would love to have quarterly board view and a 1-page plan, that you actually diarise those straight away. So you say, right, well, your quarter end is this, 2 weeks later, that's your meeting. Now that gives you a good, some strong challenges for hitting deadlines, but it means if it's in your diary, you're going to go, you're going to have it happening. I've heard so many times where people have said, you know, oh yes, it's part of board view, you know, part of a package I've offered board view, and then I've never remembered to go and do the meetings. Now, the client may or may not be annoyed about that, but you've missed such an opportunity to help, okay? So make sure that that's in there, that you have your systems are there for delivering on it, okay? And I've put here, remember that business growth advice, you're not promising to do anything for them, okay? You are promising them your knowledge and ideas that they need to action. So with any added value work that you do, you are not promising that their profits will go up, their turnover will go up. What you are saying is, I have a whole load of ideas here that if you put into practice would earn you some money. So like I said, when I was talking about doing the SSTW, simple stuff that works, if you do the pricing one, the guarantee is that you will come out of there with ideas and actions that could earn you at least how much you've paid for me, £500. Okay, because they have to take action. And in order for that to happen, you need to ask for accountability, you know, accountability. You need to hold them to account, because just like the work that the PGs do with you, you know, the most important thing is the accountability. If you didn't have us nagging you, I'm not sure you'd all do what we asked you to do and got these changes made, okay? So ask for nagging rights. Say to them, do you know what? As part of this, we need to make sure this happens. So I'd like to just be able to ring you, you know, once a week, see how you're getting on. Okay. And make sure that you do provide praise. You know, if they said, oh, do you know, I've had a terrible week, I've not managed to do anything. And then you go, well, actually, what have you been doing then? Well, I had this issue with a team member and I had to sort it all out and it's resulted in this. And whatever. And you say, well done, because actually the people stuff is the hardest thing to deal with. And you've stepped up and done that, and that's really important. Now, that's really important, and it's helped you with your business, because the knock-on effect is this, isn't it? How has that affected the rest of your team? How has that affected you personally? How do you feel now that that's been dealt with? Oh, I feel so much better. Great. So now, thinking about the other things that you said you would do, can we make time for that now? Let's book that in your diary that you've got time to do that. So give them, even if they've had a really terrible time, find a positive. Think about what could get in the way. So, okay, we've booked next week that you're going to do this. What might stop you? Well, I've got this big order that could be coming in. Okay, how does that need planning? Who else could do some work on that? What are the issues that are involved with that? What systems need putting in place to make sure that that doesn't affect you too much? It might mean that you need to step out for an hour or whatever, but how can we do that? Because we need to increase the chance of action being taken. Okay. So even, I don't mean to be, and when you get in the way, don't, you might not want to be as a directors you know, what might get in the way? You might want to say, okay, so what excuses might you bring to me next time that you haven't done it? You know, you could make it more fun. It depends on your relationship with that client, isn't it? But we need to make sure that we think about that. And then the other thing is always to use a scale. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it that we get this action done? Now, we've always said, haven't we, that 7 is sitting on the fence. 7's, oh, maybe I'll perhaps do it. So you need them to say, okay, if you said it's a 7, what would make it a 9? Because 9s or 10s will get done. But anything below a 9 or 10, you'll find an excuse not to do it. So how do we make this so important? And it might not be that's the key. So you might say, well, do you know what? From what you've told me, why are you doing this? You know, why have you gone down this road? Let's think about it. Let's just step back and think about it again. Well, it could be, do you know what? Yes, this is important because this is working towards your goals. This is working towards an outcome that we've agreed from one of the actions that we've written down on the action plan. But that scale is really important because it allows people to come up with a measurement of them holding themselves accountable too. Because statistically, the probability of achieving a goal is 10% if you've got an idea. Yeah, I think I'll do that. 40% if you decide to do it. I will do it. 50% if you make a plan to do it. Okay, I'm writing down that I'm going to do this. 65% if you promise someone else you'll do it. That's what you get them to do. 95% if you have a specific accountability appointment with the person to whom you commit. So that's what I'm saying. You need to say to somebody, well, okay, so you've agreed to do this action. I'm going to call you in a week's time. In fact, let's put it in our diary now. It's exactly what we do with you, isn't it? We say, right, our next call is this date. By that point, we're going to have done this stuff. And there's a 95% chance compared to a 10% chance just by an idea of getting that done. And that's what they value. They value that actually something has happened. Because there are 1,000,001 ideas out there. We can Google to our heart's content, can't we? And find 1,000,001 things to do. I've got a book on my desk and I keep saying I should read that. At what point does it become something that's so important that I'll do it? Probably if Shane said to me, I'm going to ask you about that book next week, then I'd read it. Yeah. So it's things like that. It's how do we make ourselves accountable or other people accountable? And as the business owner, it doesn't have to be you. Again, if the client manager can help them gauge that and can be the person that keeps them on track, great. Okay. There are lots of questioning skills and support questioning skills in System Builder. You knew I was going to say that. I have to say it's in System Builder. Okay. So from the things that we've covered, okay, it's important that you complete your action planner. So at the back of the workbook, you know there is an action plan. You will find, and this is one of the things I ask everybody to do, is to read the book first if they can, okay? Just skim read it if necessary and get a highlighter pen and just highlight the actions you are definitely going to do because you know that this is going to make a big difference to you. So if the big difference is actually getting your head round doing heart selling and therefore practicing it on somebody, and sometimes it's really good to do this somebody outside of work, okay? Then do it, put it on your action plan, set yourself a deadline, tell your coach, your practice growth expert and say, I'm going to do this by this date so that they can hold you accountable, okay? If it's looking at ways that you can add value at certain points in that journey that I just showed you, pick a point, book a team meeting, get everybody to brainstorm it, come up with a budget that you're going to spend, okay? Because if you think about it, if you're going to use a telesales company, excuse me, how much would you spend getting a new client? Okay, think about that. If that was your budget to look after a new client, what could you do? It's a different perspective, but it's worth looking at, okay? So in your workbook, I want you to go through here and I want you to, and if it's the other thing really important is to get your team to think about describing your services. Because if you get your team involved as well, they think about the language they use when they're discussing stuff. Okay, It's really important. Today on Slack, Shane said to us, give us a one-liner for benchmark. Okay, everybody came up with something different. But it was really good because we all came out with the key areas, you know. But lots of people come up with ideas for it. So if you say to somebody, right, this is the service, what's the outcome? How does that help somebody? How does that make their business better? How does that make their life better? How does that save them time, earn or save them money, take away stress? Because everything we do is to do that. It made that we've started by saying, yeah, we've had to do it because it's compliance, but that's not the reason, is it? Because if we can get accounts to be timely, they become valuable. Payroll, incredibly valuable. Bookkeeping, incredibly valuable, especially now when everybody needs to keep a tight control of their cash. Yeah? So with all this stuff, we've got some really great work to do out. And then if you really want to look at the performance measure improvement system and things, I'm going to remind you to review training that we've done before. So before this month, on some of the other sessions, we did training on PMI, we did training on simple stuff that works, and we did training on benchmark, okay? So they are all upon our YouTube channel. But if you want a link to them, let me know. Put that in the chat box. I will send you the direct link so you can watch them, because it's really important that you get your head around all of this stuff so that your language is right and you're moving forward. So finally, I just wanted to bring you back to AVN Excellence. Okay. Now, I don't know if any of you have looked at the workbook, but if you look at AVN Excellence, the criteria that the value workbook covers is 4 pages long. Okay, that's because so much of what AVN Excellence is about adding value. Okay, so knowing that, it's important that when you look at what you're doing, you also just check how you're getting on with this AVN Excellence stuff. Because it's surprising that once you start looking at this stuff, you know, one of them is engagement letters are crystal clear as what exactly is and isn't included in the service. Oh gosh. Well, that's fixed price agreements, and also that's your client engagement clarification letters that are in System Builder. You know, one of them is clients must be systematically and formally offered to help to reduce their personal and business taxes. Oh gosh, that's because we do that anyway, but actually taxability helps with that. So you've got all these things in here that once you start looking at when you do all the value workbook, you tick off a huge amount of AVN Excellence, a huge amount of AVN Excellence, which is great because you could probably go 5-star AVN Excellence by the end of applying all the value stuff. So really think about that. Sorry, my mouse has gone completely, utterly bonkers. I can't find, there we go. Okay. So let's just go back to today. So what are you going to commit to doing? This is the key. Okay, I've got a lot of you on here. I'd like each of you to just commit to one action that you're going to do. I know you're going to have a lot of stuff when you look at the value, but just one thing that I've mentioned today that you thought, oh, that would be easy, we could do that. I'm not saying something challenging. I'm not thinking a whole project. What one action can you commit to say, right, in the next 2 weeks, I could do this. Now that could be like having a team meeting to discuss how we can make the onboarding process fun for clients and us, because it's not always, is it? It could be lots of things. So in the chat box now, please, I would like you to put in your one action. So lots of you putting some really great stuff in there. Brilliant. Because it's always important, isn't it? We can come to these Zoom sessions. I get this comment quite a lot. You know, I seem to be spending half my life on Zoom watching training sessions. The important thing is, what are you taking out of it? What is the thing you do afterwards? So these, what I'm going to do is, having got them, I'm going to put them into Coach Accountable for you. Okay. So that your coach, your practice growth expert, can see them and help you support you with them. It's really important. I'm not sure that everybody's filled it in yet, so if you haven't, just put that in. Okay, so as usual, I've been recording this session and it will go into Coach Accountable under the value section once I've done. So you can watch it again if you want, because I know I've covered a huge amount of things today. If you've got any questions about any of what I've talked about today, please drop me a line. Okay, it's just emma.slack@avn.co.uk, and I will answer any questions at all. And if you need any other training, then please let me know. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your time today, and I'll see you soon. I'm just going to leave the chat open so that people can put in any more actions that they want for me. Brilliant. Take care. Have a great day.